I built that alarm myself. It should have warned me before the sky tore open." The words came out quiet, almost bitter, as Alex Cade watched the flashing blue indicator on his console blink uselessly in the dark corner of the ranch house. Outside, the moon bathed the field in silver, catching the dew-slick grass that stretched to the forest's edge. Somewhere out there, just beyond that tree line, his daughter was gone. But only seconds earlier she had been here, sitting on the old worn couch, barefoot, her hair tangled from a day of chasing rabbits while he tinkered with an ancient tractor carburetor. One moment she had laughed at his clumsy attempts to explain the engine, her bright eyes teasing as she waved a grease-streaked rag at him, and the next a pulse of searing white light had poured through the ceiling itself, and she had vanished. Not a trace. Not a scream. The chair where she sat still rocked slowly back and forth, an eerie metronome of his failure. But Alex Cade did not shout. He did not cry. He simply pulled on the battered denim jacket hanging by the door, brushed dust off the old silver star pinned to the lapel, and muttered to himself, "You just took the wrong child." The air smelled of scorched ozone, faint but unmistakable. A pattern of charred grass formed a perfect circle outside the front porch where the ground had burned and healed in an instant, leaving behind a symbol he had not seen in decades. It was not an alien mark, not precisely, but rather the calling card of mercenaries. Sloppy mercenaries, Alex thought with dry contempt. They left traces, unlike true professionals. The irony almost made him laugh. He remembered long nights in orbit, decades before Lily was born, teaching some of those very same species how to cloak a drop zone properly. That meant whoever had come for Lily hadn't known who her father was. Or worse, they had known and had done it anyway. Either scenario meant war. The living room was silent except for the soft whir of a rusty ceiling fan and the occasional mechanical click of his ancient alarm console still cycling its diagnostics in vain. The system itself was one of a kind. He had built it before Lily's birth as part of his promise to himself that he would never again let the galaxy intrude upon his quiet life. But fate didn't care about promises. A laugh, bitter and hollow, escaped his lips as he walked over to the old grandfather clock and opened its false back. Inside, concealed behind what appeared to be innocent wooden panels, was a biometric scanner and an old brass key. His palm hovered for a moment above the scanner. Did he hesitate? No. His hand dropped onto the scanner, the machine hissed in recognition, and a low rumble vibrated through the floorboards. Under the house, a hidden compartment opened with mechanical precision. Dust and cobwebs erupted as Alex descended the creaky wooden stairs to reveal what no one on Earth any longer suspected existed: the last cache. Earth's final asset protocol was thought to be decommissioned long ago, buried not only in history but erased from the very memories of those who authorized it. But one man could never erase himself. Alex Cade, the man whose name did not appear on any Earth registry, was still very much alive, and he was about to remind them what that meant. The cache was simple and stark. A single set of armor stood upright on a mechanical rack, battered but lovingly maintained. Beside it, a rifle that looked far too ordinary for its lethality. A sidearm holstered in a cracked leather belt. And a communicator, its surface dark from years of disuse. Alex picked it up and flicked the toggle switch. Nothing. Then a second flick and a sharp rap with his knuckles. The communicator crackled to life with a burst of static and a familiar voice groaned from its tiny speaker. "Oh, you're still alive? What year is it, dinosaur?" The AI sounded annoyed, almost petulant, but Alex couldn't help smiling faintly. "Boot diagnostics, Delta. We've got work." The AI hesitated, then chuckled bitterly. "Well, hell. You've really done it this time, haven't you, Alex? Fine. Full system warm-up." His fingers worked with eerie speed as he stripped out of his work clothes and donned the armor. It didn't gleam, it was matte, scarred, practical. Every scratch told a story, every dent a memory. His fingers hesitated for a brief second on the knife sheath, where Lily's name was etched in tiny careful letters from when she had once insisted she help him clean it. Then the hesitation was gone. The helmet slid into place with a faint magnetic lock and the heads-up display flickered on, flooding his vision with tactical readouts and orbital maps. The console in the room flashed as an encrypted satellite link booted itself, struggling to sync with an orbital net it had not pinged in 2 decades. Delta, priority contact. Earth Command Black Vault. The communicator paused. You really want to do that? They buried you, you know that, right? Alex's voice was cold now, sharper than the blade on his belt. Not buried enough. Within seconds, a terrified human face appeared on the dusty old console screen, blinking in disbelief. Alex Cade? The man whispered, his voice shaking. Impossible, you're supposed to be. Alex cut him off flatly. I'm not supposed to be anything except retired. You let them take my daughter. That's over. Blackout codes Alpha 1. I want orbital access and a jump window in 10 minutes or I'll come there first. He ended the transmission before they could answer. They'd comply. They always did, even when they didn't understand why. As he locked the last buckle of his armor, Alex stepped out onto the porch once more. The moon was still bright, the trees still swayed gently in the wind, and a coyote howled somewhere far away. But everything had changed. Alex Cade, who had buried every part of his former life beneath dirt and silence, was now active. And the galaxy would soon learn that Earth's final asset was not a legend. He was flesh and blood, and he was coming. The wind was cold on his face as he stepped away from the house, the battered communicator tucked securely into a pouch on his chest, its tiny screen still flickering with updates and data it hadn't processed in years. Alex Cade's boots crunched across the gravel path leading to his old barn, a place that looked to any visitor like a simple toolshed filled with rusting implements and farming junk. But beneath its sagging roof and weather-worn boards lay the hidden entrance to something very different. He reached into the darkness, found the latch embedded behind a shelf stacked with oil cans, and pulled. The floor groaned open along a seam invisible to anyone who didn't know exactly where to look, revealing a narrow spiral staircase plunging deep underground. His steps were deliberate and silent as he descended, the air growing cooler and damper with every rotation of the stairs. At the bottom was a small circular chamber lined with racks and crates marked in faded stencils. Classified asset stockpile, authorized access only. The last time he'd been down here was before Lily was born, back when he had sworn that this part of his life would stay buried. But some promises broke themselves when the wrong people crossed a line. He moved quickly but efficiently, pulling out a dusty duffel bag and filling it with items that seemed absurd in their simplicity: steel cable, a toolkit, a pair of shock batons, and what looked like a canister of ordinary spray paint. But every item had a hidden function and purpose, born from years of experience on worlds most of Earth had never heard of. Near the back of the room stood a tall locker that hummed faintly as if aware of his presence. Inside was a weapon of legend, a rifle older than Lily but still deadlier than most modern tech, its balance perfect, its recoil minimal, its ammunition exotic enough that even some alien collectors prized it as a curiosity. Alex slid it from its cradle, feeling the familiar weight settle into his hands. He checked the scope, cycled the bolt, and set it aside. The communicator crackled to life again. Delta's voice had lost its sarcasm and now sounded almost tense. They're stalling, Alex. Earth Command isn't giving you clearance yet. They think you're bluffing. He smiled grimly, lifting a small cylindrical device from one of the crates. It was about the size of a soda can and looked completely harmless. But when he flipped a hidden switch, the lights in the chamber flickered and dimmed. I know, he said quietly. That's why I'm not waiting for them. Outside, high above the atmosphere, a derelict transport drone parked in geosynchronous orbit, something he had quietly arranged decades earlier, received its activation signal. Its engines rumbled awake for the first time in 20 years. Delta chimed in again. That thing still flies? You're mad. Alex chuckled softly. Mad enough to save my daughter. The floor beneath him vibrated slightly as the drone began its descent, the old launch coordinates already programmed in. He moved upstairs without a wasted motion, locking the hidden doors behind him and resetting all traps as if preparing for war on 2 fronts. When he emerged onto the dusty ground outside the barn, the night sky had already changed. The stars seemed to shimmer and bend, the faint streak of something enormous punching through the clouds as the transport drone roared in on a controlled crash path. With perfect timing, it hovered just meters above the ground and lowered its rear hatch. The hydraulics whined in protest from years of disuse, but they worked. Alex didn't hesitate. He jogged forward, rifle slung over one shoulder, duffel bouncing against his hip, and strode up the ramp into the waiting shadows of the craft's interior. Inside was chaos. A stripped-down cockpit with cables dangling from exposed panels, auxiliary systems long since scavenged for parts, but its core functions were intact. The main drive was humming, the navigation console displaying a route that would take him not only into orbit but directly onto an intercept course with the fleeing mercenary vessel that had abducted Lily. He dropped into the pilot's seat, strapped in, and took control. The thrusters fired in sequence, rattling the entire craft as it surged upward, tearing free from gravity's pull with a deep mechanical growl that set his teeth on edge. The farmhouse and barn receded into pinpoints below as the clouds enveloped the ship, and then, suddenly, he was through them and staring out into space. "Delta," he said. "Give me telemetry on the target ship." The AI hummed, then spat back a rapid stream of data. "They're slow. Third-rate mercenaries. Sloppy jump signatures. Looks like they're plotting a course to the Haliker system, using outdated coordinates from the last Earth War treaty. I'm patching that into your HUD now. If you hit their aft section just before they cross the orbital marker, you can board without alerting their bridge crew." Alex's fingers danced across the controls, punching in precise vectors while keeping one eye on the fading blue curve of Earth. Somewhere down there, bureaucrats were panicking as they realized he had ignored their delay tactics. He could almost hear their frantic calls as they realized what was happening, their voices bouncing between departments that had buried his file decades ago. His lips curled into a wry smile as the engines flared, pushing him harder into the seat. The old ship responded beautifully, almost as if eager to stretch its legs again after a long sleep. And in that moment, amid the roaring thrusters and flickering displays, he felt it, not fear, not rage, but focus. His mind was cold, calculating, sharp. Every heartbeat felt deliberate, every second precious. Lily was out there. Alone, frightened maybe, but strong. Stronger than any child had a right to be. And he would reach her. He always did. As the craft closed distance with the fleeing mercenary ship, Delta's voice broke in again, this time laced with humor. "You know, statistically speaking, this is a terrible plan. One ship, one old operator, no backup, no authorization. Completely insane." Alex's voice was low but firm as he answered. "They didn't take a random child, Delta. They took my daughter. And I am Earth's final asset. That makes this their worst day." The words hung in the cabin as he adjusted the final approach angle, locking in a trajectory that would bring him so close that the mercenary ship's own sensors would blind themselves trying to track his entry. The game had begun, and the enemy didn't even know yet. The ship's engines whispered as Alex adjusted their thrust, his gloved hands moving with the grace of long-forgotten instinct. The mercenary vessel ahead loomed larger now, an ugly patchwork of stolen tech and rusted armor plating. Its silhouette against the stars was familiar in the way a predator's shadow is familiar to its prey, but this time the predator did not realize it was being hunted. The flickering readouts in his cockpit fed him a constant stream of data: shield strength, sensor range, blind spots. He had trained entire generations of humans and aliens alike to detect those vulnerabilities, yet these mercenaries, lazy and arrogant, left them wide open. A gap in their aft shielding, right near a misaligned heat vent, offered the perfect entry point. His own battered ship slid into position just beyond their sensors. He cut main power, letting momentum carry him silently forward until he was almost scraping their hull. In the quiet of that moment, with the stars turning lazily around him, he felt himself slip fully back into the person he had once been, a ghost, invisible and lethal. A metallic clang echoed faintly as he latched the airlock onto their outer hull. Inside, their scanners would register nothing but normal radiation fluctuation, blind to the fact that an ancient enemy was already crawling across their skin. Alex slid into the locked chamber, pressed a coded sequence into the override, and forced the hatch to cycle. The hiss of escaping pressure greeted him as the doors slid open onto a dimly lit corridor lined with grime and flickering lights. The stench of unwashed bodies and burned wiring made him wrinkle his nose, but he did not hesitate. His boots made no sound as he stepped inside and began moving down the narrow corridor, hugging shadows that seemed eager to shelter him. The first sentry appeared from around a corner, a bulky alien in patchwork armor, carrying a plasma carbine slung lazily over one shoulder, clearly bored. Alex didn't even raise a weapon. His hand shot out, lightning quick, driving 2 fingers into a nerve cluster just below the creature's armored collarbone. The alien crumpled silently to the deck, unconscious before it could process what had happened. Alex dragged the limp body into a dark alcove and kept moving. His mind was already sketching out a map of the vessel as he moved, marking bulkheads, maintenance hatches, and weak points without conscious effort. His steps were guided by an instinct honed over missions long erased from Earth's records, missions that had left scars not only on his body but on his soul. Delta's voice broke the silence in his earpiece, a whisper of sarcasm returning to its tone. "Security here's a joke. You could do this half asleep. They're not even using proper patrol patterns." Alex smiled faintly as he ducked into a side corridor and popped open a maintenance panel, slipping into a crawlspace no wider than his shoulders. The metal creaked faintly as he moved through the cramped duct, his body remembering exactly how to contort and twist to navigate these forgotten arteries of ships like this one. He emerged several decks above, directly outside what his scans told him was their interrogation suite. The irony did not escape him. Somewhere inside that room, these fools thought they were in control, thought they held power over his daughter. They were about to learn how wrong they were. A quick glance at his wrist display showed the ship's crew manifest, a few dozen mercenaries from scattered systems, none of them impressive, none of them disciplined. He had dealt with far worse. His fingers danced over the panel beside the door, hacking its simple lock with ease, and the heavy hatch slid open with a reluctant groan. Inside, the lighting was harsh and clinical, casting cruel shadows over a chair bolted to the deck where a prisoner sat restrained. For a heartbeat, his heart froze, until he realized it was not Lily. It was another captive, an alien with bruises on its face and fear in its eyes. The room was empty otherwise, the interrogators having stepped away, leaving their prisoner alone. Alex stepped forward quickly, placing a hand on the alien's shoulder. The captive flinched but then froze, recognition dawning in its wide, glassy eyes. "You," it whispered hoarsely. "The ghost. The one they said was dead." Alex leaned in close. "Where is the child they brought aboard?" The alien swallowed hard, trembling. "Not here. Not anymore. She was moved to the command module. The captain himself is holding her. He said she was valuable. Said Earth itself would pay for her return." Alex's jaw tightened as anger surged through him. Valuable. As if Lily was a commodity, a bargaining chip to be traded for favors. He felt a cold fury settle over him, clearer than rage and sharper than grief. "How many guards between here and the command module?" he asked. The alien hesitated, then answered quickly. 6, maybe 7. But sloppy. They trust their sensors too much. Alex nodded once. "Stay here. When this is over, I'll send someone to release you." Without another word, he turned and moved into the corridor, his rifle sliding smoothly into his hands. His movements became even more precise now, each step calculated, each breath measured. The mercenary guards who stood in his path barely had time to register their mistake before they were neutralized, one taken down with a suppressed shot to the throat, another caught in a brutal chokehold that left him unconscious before his weapon cleared its holster. There was a rhythm to it, a grim music that his body remembered even if his mind had tried to forget. At the final bulkhead before the command module, Alex paused, listening. He could hear voices on the other side, alien voices laughing, boasting about their easy payday, oblivious to the fact that death itself stood inches from them. He adjusted the settings on his rifle, switching to a silent dispersion mode that would disable the entire room without firing a shot. With a quick twist, he overrode the door's lock and it slid open just enough for him to slip inside. The scene within was almost comical. 3 aliens sat at a table, one of them drinking something foul-smelling from a cracked metal cup, another leaning back with its feet propped on the console. The third was scrolling lazily through a datapad, oblivious to the danger. Beyond them, Lily sat on a makeshift cot, her small hands tied but her expression fierce, defiant. Her gaze met his the moment he stepped into the room, and for a heartbeat, her eyes sparkled with a mix of surprise and absolute trust. Alex acted instantly. A flick of his wrist and a pulse of electromagnetic energy surged from his rifle, disabling every light and console in the room. The aliens froze in shock as darkness enveloped them, but Alex moved like a shadow, striking with brutal precision. When the emergency lights flickered on seconds later, the mercenaries were unconscious at his feet and Lily was already in his arms. She didn't cry, didn't even flinch, just whispered, "I knew you'd come, Dad." His throat tightened, but he allowed himself no more than a brief nod before he pulled a knife from his belt and sliced through her restraints. "We're not done yet," he murmured. "Hold on tight." And with that, Alex Cade turned and carried his daughter out of the command module, every sense alert, every muscle prepared, knowing that the fight was far from over but that this moment, was the reason he existed. Earth's final asset was in play, and the galaxy was about to remember what that meant. The corridors blurred as Alex moved, Lily's arms wrapped tightly around his neck, her small frame pressed against the worn armor that still bore the scars of 100 forgotten battles. Her heartbeat was steady, calm in a way that told him she trusted him completely, and that trust only fueled his focus. The ship rumbled beneath them, a low pulse of mechanical life reminding him that time was precious. Even now, the mercenary crew would be stirring, realizing something had gone terribly wrong. They would be rallying, arming themselves, locking down corridors, thinking they could trap a single man and a child. But they did not understand who had boarded their ship. They did not know that Earth's final asset was no legend, no ghost story meant to frighten reckless mercs around campfires. He was real, and he was hunting them. Lily's voice broke the silence, soft but steady. "I counted 6 outside when they brought me here." She whispered the words directly into his ear, her breath warm against the cool composite of his helmet. 6, maybe 7? They had laughed at her, assumed she was harmless, assumed they could speak openly in front of a frightened child. They had made yet another mistake. He set her down gently for a moment, crouching beside her in a shadowed alcove as footsteps echoed distantly ahead. His rifle swung silently onto his shoulder as he drew 2 thin shock batons from his belt, twisting them once to power them up. Their ends hummed faintly, invisible to anyone who was not standing directly in front of them. He glanced down at Lily and smiled faintly beneath the helmet, a smile she could not see but would somehow sense all the same. "Stay close," he whispered. She nodded, crouched low, mimicking his posture with the uncanny grace of a child raised by a man who never stopped being a soldier, even when pretending to be a rancher. The footsteps grew louder. 2 mercenaries appeared, their weapons hanging lazily, chatting about the payout they expected from this little job. Alex moved before either could register the shape in the shadows. A single step forward, a flick of both wrists, and the batons connected with the back of their necks. Twin thuds as bodies hit the deck, silent and heavy. No alarms, no shouts. The ship remained quiet, except for the steady thrum of its engines. He signaled Lily forward again, and they slipped into a maintenance hatch, bypassing a security checkpoint entirely. Delta's voice, always hovering in his ear, was crisp and dry now. "I have intercepted their comms. They know you are here, but they still have no idea where you entered. Their captain is panicking." Alex could almost smile at that. Panic was useful. Panic made enemies sloppy. It made them rush, made them abandon standard patterns. He moved with more purpose now, his mind racing ahead, sketching out the fastest path to the ship's hangar bay where his infiltration craft was magnetically locked to their outer hull. They needed to reach that point before the crew regrouped and blocked every route. A sudden vibration in the deck plate made him stop. A deeper hum beneath the usual mechanical rhythm. He recognized it instantly. Internal lockdown sequence. Blast doors were sealing. They intended to trap him between decks, to flush him out section by section. His eyes narrowed as he looked around, noting a ventilation shaft just above their heads. He knelt, lifted Lily easily, and guided her into the shaft. She moved with surprising grace, crawling ahead as he followed, his larger frame filling the narrow space. The shaft smelled of oil and old grease, and its walls were scuffed from years of neglect, but it led precisely where he needed it to go. As they crawled forward, he heard voices beneath them. Mercenaries shouting into radios, calling for reinforcements, arguing about how a single human could have bypassed all their defenses. Then one of them said something that made him pause completely. He's not just some farmer. He's the one from the archives. The ghost. The asset. Even after all these years, they had heard the stories. But it was too late for them to learn respect now. Alex reached a vent grating, peered down, and counted 5 guards clustered below, their weapons trained on the corridor he had just vacated. His fingers moved smoothly as he detached a small canister from his belt and twisted its base. He dropped it through the grate. It landed with a soft clink that made every mercenary freeze, eyes darting toward the sound just as a dense cloud of shimmering gas burst outward, filling the compartment in seconds. The guards coughed, staggered, and then dropped as the gas worked its quiet efficiency. Non-lethal but utterly effective. Alex and Lily moved on. At the next junction, he slowed. Delta's voice again. Captain is barricaded in the command deck. He has ordered the crew to prepare the escape pods. They expect you to try to fight through the main bulkhead. Alex shook his head. Wrong again. He remembered every structural weakness of this ship type. He located a service conduit leading to an inspection panel directly adjacent to the hangar bay entrance. The conduit was cramped, filled with old wiring and pipes, but it offered a perfect bypass route. Lily didn't even hesitate, wriggling through ahead of him, her courage humbling and inspiring all at once. They emerged into the dim light of the hangar deck, only to find it empty, too empty. His instincts screamed trap. He scanned the shadows, noting the automated gun emplacements that had been hastily rigged along the catwalks above. Improvised defenses, careless wiring, sloppy concealment. A rush job. He calculated angles, fields of fire, blind spots. Then he picked up a piece of discarded metal, hefted it once, and hurled it down the far end of the bay with all his strength. It clattered loudly and the autogun spun, targeting the noise reflexively, firing in a deafening chorus. While they emptied their magazines into a harmless hunk of steel, Alex and Lily ran, weaving through crates and shadows until they reached the ramp of his waiting ship. But as he keyed in his override sequence, a voice boomed from overhead speakers. Alex Cade. Earth's ghost. The last asset. I have your daughter's records now. Do you know who she really is? The captain's voice was oily with confidence. Alex froze only for a heartbeat before motioning Lily inside the ship. He didn't need to play this game, didn't need to listen to threats from a desperate fool. But Lily surprised him. She looked up at the speaker, her voice calm but fierce. You have no idea who I am. And you have no idea what you've just done. The confidence drained from the captain's voice almost instantly. Alex stepped up the ramp, sealed the hatch, and powered up his engines. The hangar doors began to close, an automated last-ditch effort to stop him, but he was faster. His ship roared forward, tearing through the shrinking gap just as the doors slammed shut behind him. He was free, and the mercenary's ship was already fading behind him as he angled toward deep space. In the cockpit, Lily climbed into the co-pilot's seat, her small fingers already reaching for switches she somehow knew how to operate. Alex looked at her, pride burning in his chest. The fight wasn't over, not yet. But the first part of this war had been won. And he knew one thing for certain now, she wasn't just his daughter by blood. She was his daughter in spirit too. And together, they would finish this. The stars stretched out before them, cold and endless, as the stolen craft hurtled through space, its patched-together systems humming with barely contained energy. The escape had been clean, but Alex knew better than to believe they were safe. In the cockpit beside him, Lily sat alert, her small frame dwarfed by the heavy pilot's seat, but her fingers already moving across the controls with a familiarity that sent a chill down his spine. She wasn't guessing, wasn't fumbling. She was activating systems he hadn't taught her, bypassing safeties and flicking switches with a precision no child her age should possess. He watched her in the dim blue glow of the dashboard, saying nothing for the moment, letting her work. Every second counted now. Behind them, the mercenary vessel would be struggling to regain control of its systems, the captain barking orders, demanding pursuit vectors and jump coordinates. But they wouldn't be able to follow yet, not after the chaos Alex had left in his wake. Still, time was not on their side. It never was. He reached out, placing a steadying hand on Lily's shoulder, and she looked up at him, her gaze sharp and unflinching. "You always knew, didn't you, Dad?" she said softly, but it wasn't a question. There was something in her tone, something that carried weight far beyond her years. He nodded slowly, his jaw tightening. "I suspected," he admitted. But suspicion had never turned into certainty, not until the moment she had sat calmly in that cell, staring down her captors, waiting without fear for him to come. Now the pieces fell into place, and they fell hard. The mercenary captain's last words echoed in his mind. "I have her records now." Did he even know what he'd found? Did Earth's leaders understand the magnitude of what they had betrayed? Lily wasn't just his daughter by chance or biology. She was more than that. A key. A symbol. A hidden asset in her own right, though she had been hidden from herself until tonight. Delta's voice cut through the moment, dry and brisk. "They're coming back online faster than I projected, Alex. Looks like they're receiving remote assistance from another ship. Reinforcements. A contract fleet. They're accelerating to intercept." Alex's fingers danced across the navigational panel, plotting a course that would take them through a narrow debris field, a remnant of an old battlefield long forgotten by most of the galaxy but memorized by him. He knew every shattered hulk and tumbling fragment, every twisted relic that still drifted there. The perfect place to disappear, for those who knew how. He adjusted their heading, locked in the new coordinates, and activated the drive. The engines flared as the ship surged forward, the stars stretching into long, thin lines as they raced toward the graveyard of ancient war. As they flew, Lily leaned close to him, her voice low and urgent. "They were talking about me when they thought I wasn't listening," she said. "They called me an heir. They said something about a throne." Her words confirmed what Alex had feared since the moment she vanished from their living room. This wasn't a random kidnapping or even a vendetta against him. This was bigger, much bigger. He drew in a long breath, steadying himself before speaking. "Before you were born," he began, "there was a war between Earth and a coalition of alien worlds. A war that ended only because a treaty was signed. But that treaty came with a price, a secret agreement. An insurance policy, they called it. A child, one born of human blood but carrying a claim to alien royalty, hidden away on Earth, raised without knowledge of her legacy." Lily's eyes widened, but she didn't speak. She understood the gravity of what he was saying, even at her young age. "You," he said, "you are that child. And they were never supposed to find you." His voice was bitter now, tinged with anger not at her, but at the people who had used them both as pieces on a board. All those years hiding on the ranch, all the effort he had spent living as a ghost, had been for nothing because someone, somewhere, had leaked her existence to the wrong ears. The mercenaries were just pawns, hired to deliver her to factions that would tear the fragile piece apart for power and control. The debris field appeared ahead, a vast expanse of wreckage stretching out across the void like a cemetery of metal and bone. Alex guided the ship through the maze, weaving between crumbling hulls and drifting engine cores, each movement precise, calculated. No one could pursue them here, not without risking collision and disaster. But even here, he knew they couldn't hide forever. The real danger wasn't just the mercenaries, it was Earth itself. Earth's leaders had sent them. Earth's leaders had signed the treaty, hidden the truth, and now betrayed him. They thought he had disappeared. They thought he would stay buried. But they were wrong. As the ship settled into a shadowed pocket between two shattered cruisers, Alex shut down all active systems, plunging them into near-total darkness. The hum of the engines faded, replaced by the eerie silence of space. For the first time since the night began, they had a moment to breathe. Lily sat quietly beside him, her small fingers still resting on the control panel, her face illuminated by the dim emergency lights. Alex watched her closely, his heart aching with pride and sorrow all at once. She was so much more than he had ever realized, so much more than any of them had realized. Delta's voice came again, this time softer, almost reflective. So what's the plan now, Alex? You can't outrun this forever. You can't hide from Earth and the Mercenaries both. Alex leaned back in his seat, his mind racing, but his expression calm. No, he said, I can't outrun them. But I don't need to outrun them. I need to send a message. His fingers moved to the console, opening an encrypted channel, bypassing every government filter and failsafe, broadcasting on an old military frequency no longer monitored by ordinary authorities. His voice, when he spoke, was calm and clear. Earth Command, he said, you know who I am? You know what I am. You sent them for my daughter. You thought you could bury the past. You thought you could hide your betrayal. But now I know the truth. And so will everyone else. This channel is open. Anyone can hear it. I suggest you listen carefully. His hand hovered over the transmit button as he prepared to broadcast the evidence he had gathered, the records stolen from the mercenary ship, the truth of Lily's identity, the details of the treaty, every secret Earth Command had hoped would stay buried. It was a declaration of war not on behalf of a nation, but on behalf of one man and his daughter. And as the signal went live, as his words spread out into the void where allies and enemies alike would hear them, Alex Cade felt no fear. He felt only clarity. They had taken the wrong child. They had awakened Earth's final asset. And now the galaxy would remember what that meant. The silence that followed his broadcast was profound, a deep stillness that stretched across the cockpit and seemed to echo into the endless void outside the small ship. Alex Cade sat perfectly still, his fingers resting on the controls, his body rigid with tension yet his mind cold and clear. For a few seconds the universe itself seemed to pause and listen. Then it began. The transmissions flooded in, one after another, not from Earth Command but from across the stars, from colonies, border worlds, fringe planets where the scars of old wars still ran deep and resentment had never quite faded. Voices he recognized and many more he did not spoke up, some offering aid, others merely expressing how that the ghost of Earth's final asset was alive and moving again. They had thought him dead. They had buried his name in classified vaults and erased his records, but they had never erased the legend. And now that legend was alive, louder than ever, amplified by his transmission, carried by every pirate network and fringe broadcast array within reach. The galaxy was listening. And Earth Command could no longer pretend they held all the cards. Beside him Lily sat quietly, watching the console's readouts with wide but steady eyes. She was absorbing it all, not just the rush of messages but the truth behind them, the realization that her father was far more than a quiet rancher, far more than even the stories might have suggested. And more than that, she was beginning to understand who she was too. Not just a lost child, not just the daughter of a hidden soldier, but something more dangerous entirely. The heir to a lineage and a legacy carefully buried and then revealed through betrayal. And now that betrayal had been exposed. Alex reached out and ruffled her hair gently, the gesture small but grounding, and she leaned into it without a word. In that moment no speeches were needed. They both understood what came next. Delta's voice broke the silence, brisk but edged with what sounded almost like admiration. Well, Alex, you certainly know how to make a dramatic return. Earth Command is scrambling. I've intercepted their encrypted orders. They're deploying pursuit teams. Fast response cruisers, drones, agents, the whole lot. They're desperate to catch you before this story spreads any further. Alex nodded slowly, already expecting that response. They have to try, he said simply. Their entire position depends on containing this secret. But it's too late for that now. The moment he had pressed that transmit button, the balance of power shifted. No longer was this a hidden struggle between a father and a shadowy government. Now the entire galaxy was involved, and that made him far more dangerous. He powered up the engines again, guiding the ship out of the debris field with smooth, deliberate motions. The stars reappeared in full brilliance as they cleared the wreckage, the vast expanse of space stretching out before them like a limitless battlefield. He checked the scanner and confirmed what Delta had already warned. Pursuit ships, fast and sleek, were converging on their position from multiple vectors. But they weren't close enough yet. He had a window. Not long, but long enough for what he planned to do next. His fingers moved over the controls, keying in a new course. He wasn't going to run any farther. Not in the way Earth Command expected. He wasn't going to some hidden refuge or ancient bunker. He was heading straight for Earth itself. Right back to the homeworld that had betrayed them both. The one place they would never expect him to go. The one place they assumed he could never reach. Delta whistled softly in his ear. That's either brilliance or madness, Alex. Probably both. Do you think they'll let you land? Alex smiled faintly, a grim smile sharpened by certainty. They won't have a choice. I'm not sneaking in. I'm coming in loud. I'm coming in with the whole galaxy watching. Let them try to stop me while every fringe pirate, rogue trader, and dissident faction listens in. Every move they make will be broadcast in real time. If they fire on me, the galaxy will see it. If they refuse to acknowledge me, they look weak. Either way I win. Lily turned to look at him, her expression unreadable for a long moment. Finally she spoke, her voice quiet but carrying immense weight. What happens when we get there? What happens to us? Alex met her gaze steadily. We walk into their chambers, he said, and we make sure they understand that everything has changed. They don't get to hide behind lies anymore. They don't get to decide our fate. Not theirs to decide anymore. He knew it wouldn't be simple. He knew there would be danger, deception, ambushes waiting for them. But he was ready. He had spent a lifetime preparing for this kind of fight, even if he had never imagined it would be his own daughter at the center of the storm. As their ship closed distance with Earth, the scanners lit up with warnings. Defense satellites had locked onto their approach vector. Interceptor squadrons scrambled from orbital bases, closing fast. Automated warnings flashed across the cockpit, each one more insistent than the last. Stand down. Identify yourself. Alter course immediately. But Alex ignored them all. He maintained his heading, adjusted his trajectory only to make his approach as visible and deliberate as possible. The entire galaxy was watching now. The comm channels were alive with chatter, pirate feeds carrying his image, fringe stations replaying his transmission, countless eyes fixed on this single small craft as it defied the most powerful military in human history. In the final seconds before atmospheric entry, he activated an old transponder code, one so ancient that most of Earth Command systems should not even have recognized it. But they did. The code of Earth's final asset. The code that overrode every automated defense system. The satellites fell silent. The interceptors hesitated. The planetary shield flickered, then allowed his passage. Even after all these years, after all the attempts to erase him, his authority remained embedded in the system at its deepest levels. A backdoor no one had dared delete because no one wanted to take the responsibility if he ever returned. Now he had. And their systems, their defenses, their machines, all obeyed him without question. The clouds broke around them as they plunged into the atmosphere, the familiar curve of Earth growing larger and more detailed by the second. And as they approached the surface, as the capital spires rose to meet them, Alex felt no fear. Only resolve. This was the reckoning. Not just for him but for everyone who had tried to manipulate them, who had tried to trade his daughter's life for a fragile and dishonest peace. The galaxy would remember this day. They would remember the moment the last asset came home, not as a tool of the government, but as a father with nothing left to lose and everything to fight for. And they would remember that Earth's defenses, their laws, their systems, had obeyed him even as their leaders scrambled to deny he ever existed. Beside him, Lily gripped the armrest tightly, her eyes wide but shining with fierce determination. Whatever happened next, they would face it together. And as their ship touched down in the heart of Earth's capital, as the cameras and weapons and eyes of the world turned to them, Alex Cade knew that their enemies had already lost. They had taken the wrong child. And Earth's final asset had come to take her back and tear down everything that stood in their way.